Hi, I'm Jamie Giroux. Thank you for coming to our session today and to everyone else in the session for putting it together. I'm really excited to hear about everyone's work. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my work looking at young children's curiosity in school contexts. Specifically, we looked at curiosity as school enjoyment as rated by children themselves and how this curiosity related to the development of general knowledge from preschool to kindergarten. This is work that I did with my colleagues Eric Gruzik, Virginia Vitiello, Jessica Whitaker, and Bob Pianta at the School of Education and Human Development at the University of Virginia, formerly known as the Curry School of Education. And Eric is also affiliated with NWEA. Um, so broadly, I'm really interested in understanding the role that curiosity plays in school contexts, specifically because I want to know how we can take advantage of children's natural curiosity that they have from such young ages and try to sustain that curiosity over time and bring it into the classroom contexts where right now we don't see it as being very prevalent or apparent. And this isn't because children are not curious. Of course, we know young children are very curious, but even older children were found by Post and colleagues to be very curious about things, even things related to academic domains, but that this curiosity doesn't seem to show up in school settings. So again, I'm interested in looking at curiosity across contexts and in different ways, but what I'm talking about today is specifically about curiosity for learning in school. And in this study, I am looking at curiosity kind of broadly as the desire to learn and operationalizing it with young children as enjoyment of learning. But in my other work, I do think about it kind of in other ways, such as response to uncertainty and what levels of uncertainty are most likely to lead to exploratory behavior. So I'll talk a little bit about how that work can inform ideas for intervening and promoting curiosity. But for today's talk, we're focusing on this kind of broader idea of enjoyment for learning as curiosity. And the research question of this work looks at how children's curiosity to learn in school, how that school enjoyment relates to their school readiness. So in thinking about curiosity and school readiness, we have substantial research that shows that promoting curiosity is a really great, helpful way to support children's intrinsic motivation, especially for science, and that can then promote learning. And more generally, you can see differences in the depth of learning and the level of learning and meaningfulness of information learned when it's curiosity driven. So there's reason for us to want curiosity to be driving children's learning. That said, there is reason to believe that curiosity declines with year in school, at least curiosity within school contexts. And this could be a result of school context being inconsistent with curiosity, with being curious. So if you think about what it means to be curious, it's kind of learning that's driven by your curiosity, by what you want to know. But in schools, we have these standards and expectations of what children are supposed to be learning and learning to do and how they're supposed to be doing that. And that's going to be opposite of having curiosity driving whatever it is that children are doing. Further, you can see a pretty strong emphasis in school context on performance. Even if it's not intentional, we tend to have these standards that we want children to achieve, and we focus a lot on that, and we use metrics of tracking progress that directly relate to how children perform on different measures. And so if we are thinking about curiosity, again, that's going to be much more learning oriented and mastery oriented as opposed to performance oriented. So there's this inconsistency or this disconnect between how schools currently are run and what happens in school contexts and what it means to be curious and to learn from a curiosity driven experiences. That said, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, be interested in promoting curiosity in school, and especially, thinking about early educational environments, how they might really benefit from a focus on children's curiosity. So prior work shows the importance of preschool and especially high quality preschool in terms of being able to support children's school readiness and get them at the highest level possible for that initial school starting so that they can be successful in their academic careers. Similarly, research has found that having positive learning affect, so positive ideas and perceptions about school and enjoying school also relates to academic success when starting kindergarten. And so again, it's important to kind of think about how these things interact and work together. And this is especially true for children most at risk of challenges related to school readiness and school achievement. And that's where you see the greatest benefit of high quality preschool. Importantly, not only do we see outcomes related to early learning affect and perceptions of the learning environment, but our recent work has shown that we can reliably measure these perceptions of school enjoyment in young children. And so that's the measure that we use for the current work. So when we talk about school readiness, in the current study, we looked at this in a really specific way by focusing on general knowledge. And so general knowledge is this kind of broad understanding and integration of information about the world. So when you think about, what things children are curious about, it's usually driven by their observations of their environment and of the world around them. And for that reason, it often takes the form of asking questions about social interactions, about others, and about science, about, why is the sky blue? Why do plants grow? Why do plants need water? What are the difference between animals and people? And all of these different questions that can help children to develop ideas and also can help us to represent or to understand the representations that children have of these ideas, right? So if we're trying to teach them about, life forms and animals and people, and we understand that they see these things as separate of animals and people, we can kind of use that to use their curiosity to guide their learning to better understand those different topics. So that's one of the reasons why we're interested in general knowledge, but also it's really important for school readiness and for academic success. So although it's understudied, there's been some work that shows that it's very important in terms of being predictive of later learning across domains. So science, obviously, but also math and literacy, even when controlling for earlier math and literacy scores. And importantly, general knowledge shows the largest deficit at kindergarten entrance for at-risk children. So again, it's important, it's an important domain, and it's one that we don't know enough about, but also one that's likely to be related to children's curiosity. So for the current study, we wanted to know how does curiosity relate to academic performance in school contexts, and especially in these early educational contexts. So prior work with different ages has found that there's a bidirectional association where curiosity at one time point can predict later academic performance, but also vice versa. So you see these things as mutually complementary. But some work with younger children, for example, by Shaw and colleagues, found that curiosity was predictive of academic performance. It was that kind of directional association. And other work has found that the opposite is true, where curiosity didn't predict later academic performance, but academic performance predicted later curiosity. So again, we just were interested in knowing, when we focus specifically on general knowledge and we look at this in young children in preschool, preschool to kindergarten change, what associations do we see, and do we see any differences in the directionality? And specifically, we wanted to look at child measures of curiosity. So what children actually said about their feelings related to school and direct assessments of that. So what we did was we assessed children at these 2 time points. So in preschool, when the average age was about 4.6 years old, and then in kindergarten, when the average age was about 5.1 years of age. And these children were recruited from public preschools that served predominantly economically disadvantaged populations. So this is defined as being at about 200% of the federal poverty level. And once these children were in kindergarten, most of them were qualified for the free and reduced lunch program, with 83% qualifying for free lunch specifically. And these schools are located in the mid-Atlantic area of the United States. Our participants came from a pretty diverse background, both ethnic and racially, as well as linguistically. So you can see here that the majority of our sample was made up of children from Hispanic backgrounds, with about 17% identifying as Black African American, 10% Asian, 10% white, 3% multiracial, and 2% from another background. And about 55% of these children spoke Spanish as the dominant language at home, followed by 24% speaking a different language, not Spanish or English, and only 21% speaking English at home. So again, a lot of linguistic diversity. So the measures that we included at each time point included our general knowledge scale, which is taken from the Woodcock-Johnson 3. And we included 2 of the subsets, the science and social studies subset with 28 items, and we used the W scores for our analyses. And from the test developers, we have this median reliability coefficient of 0.88. And then to measure curiosity, we looked at children's school enjoyment using these 3 items here. We asked them, is school fun? Do you enjoy school? And are you excited to go to school? And this was administered by trained proctors who help children to use this graphical Likert style scale of a little, sometimes, and a lot, using circles that increase in size to indicate how much they agreed with the statement. And this was originally adapted from prior research, but in our more recent work, we've actually tested it out with preschool and kindergarten children to show that it's got sound psychometrics. Again, children were assessed in preschool and then again in kindergarten, and they were assessed individually by the research proctor. So just to remind you of our question, we wanted to know, what does this relation look like between general knowledge and curiosity from preschool to kindergarten? And so we included those 3 school enjoyment items as a latent variable of school enjoyment. And we have that at both preschool and at kindergarten. And then we have general knowledge measured at preschool and in kindergarten using the Woodcock-Johnson 3. And we controlled for whether children spoke Spanish at home, children's age, their gender, whether they received free lunch or whether they received reduced price lunch. And I'll give you a minute to kind of look through this model before I highlight the important findings for our research questions. Okay, so again, we were interested in looking at the association from preschool to kindergarten between enjoyment as our measure of curiosity and general knowledge. And so you want to look at these kind of cross-lagged associations. And so what we found is that there is support for a bidirectional association between preschool enjoyment and general knowledge with kindergarten enjoyment and general knowledge. But something to pay attention to here is the size of those associations, which is twice as large for the association between preschool enjoyment and kindergarten general knowledge than the opposite, from preschool general knowledge to kindergarten enjoyment. Also, if you notice the association from one time point to the next on the same measures, you can see that, of course, preschool scores predict kindergarten scores, but that association between preschool and kindergarten is much stronger for general knowledge than for enjoyment of school or curiosity. So what does this mean? What can we conclude from this? Well, we believe that these results support the idea that curiosity has a lot of potential for supporting school readiness by promoting curiosity to promote general knowledge. And specifically, we think this because although we see this bidirectional association, the relation between preschool and kindergarten curiosity to general knowledge is much stronger than the other way around. And also importantly, because of that lower association between preschool and kindergarten enjoyment or curiosity than compared to general knowledge, we believe that this shows that there's more malleability. Well, it shows there's more malleability in enjoyment from preschool to kindergarten. And so we believe that this means that there's more potential to intervene and change curiosity from preschool to kindergarten. And so then, of course, the next question that we're interested in exploring is, what might this intervention look like? And can we actually test to see if this hypothesis is true? So some of my current work is looking at how child-driven learning can be effective for promoting kind of the learning outcomes that schools want to see, but also relating to this idea of enjoying school and seeing curiosity sustained across years in school. And the way that we think that this can happen is by kind of shifting the focus and reframing education to be much more mastery-oriented as opposed to performance-oriented. And one way that this can be done is by, of course, providing more autonomy to children in those academic contexts. So letting their curiosity kind of drive what they're learning about and how they're learning, giving them the opportunity to try to figure out something on their own before you just tell them what it is. And kind of loosening up the way that we see this rigid structure right now around what's expected to be taught and how we assess learning, to focus more on the outcomes that might be more important, like, are kids curious? Do they enjoy learning? And are they learning things in a meaningful way that's going to be useful for them to be able to use that information in the future? I'm going to end by acknowledging the funding for this work, which is from an IES grant to Bob Pianta, Virginia Vitiello, Jessica Whitaker, and Eric Ruzek, as well as some support that I've had for my participation in this work through the Jacobs Foundation Early Career Research Fellowship. And I look forward to having our live discussion and answering any questions that you have about this work. Thanks so much for your attention.